What makes the atrocity propaganda especially tragic and ironic is the realization that this campaign wasn't just a simple collection of lies or propaganda. They were, in a very real sense, confessions. Let me explain. To understand Israel's oppression of the Palestinians and the at times cartoonishly vile things done and said by the Israeli public, we must first understand Israel itself. Israeli society is a deeply traumatized one. It is also toxic, deluded, and narcissistic. It is a society so sure of its righteous superiority that all through its existence, it has actively oppressed and terrorized indigenous peoples. But how did Israeli society become like this? The answer lies in the stories Israel tells itself about itself. You see, the stories we tell ourselves play a large role in shaping how we view both ourselves and the world around us. And a nation's story is its bedrock, the foundation that guides the actions of its leaders and people. It explains the past, justifies the present, and charts the future. And this is best exemplified by none other than Israel. Here we arrive at the crux of the issue, where at the root of Israeli identity are two key narratives: victimhood and supremacy. Because of the legacy of European Jewry's persecution, which culminated in the Holocaust, the Jews believe their experience is unique and the ultimate standard of suffering, thus beyond any comparison.
Jews, because of their history, have common cause with the oppressed. Some Indians were deliberately given blankets, tainted with smallpox, died like flies.
You want to talk bioterrorism? Look who started it.
Amen to that, my friend.
That's right. Christopher Columbus was no better than Adolf Hitler.
Hey, whoa. Back up. Hitler?
Yeah. I'm not the only one who thinks so.
Talking out of your ass. Columbus and Hitler. You're trivializing the Holocaust. Frankly, Reuben, if you got that kind of covert anti-Semitism, I'd like you to leave my house.
Anti-Semitism?
That's right.
To even begin to compare anyone else's suffering to theirs can only be out of hatred of the Jewish people, for the Jews are not just victims, but the most important victims around.
We, the victims, not only the biggest victims, but the only victims around.
And on the other hand, a narrative of supremacy, of the best of mankind and God's chosen people, set apart by divine favor and destined for greatness above all others.
במקום מסוים, אלוהים, זה שיצר את כל העולם, את כל הגלקסיות, את כל האנשים, הופיע. הוא לא סתם הופיע, אלא גילה את המטרה שלשמה נברא העולם, בעצם. ועל פי התורה, אלוהים רצה ובחר בעם אחד, עם סגולה, רק בו, מכל העמים.
The dichotomy of these two narratives, one of elite victimhood, the other of unparalleled supremacy, produces a deeply toxic self-image that is characterized by three defining features: superiority, victimhood, and shame. Superiority. Their perceived status as superior humans, rooted in religious tradition that has evolved into an ethno-nationalist ethos, ultimately produces the belief that Jewish Israelis are the most important people in the human experience, and that their quest for prophesied greatness takes precedence over the experience and rights of all others.
The heart of chosenness is first and foremost that to be a Jew is to be part of the most extraordinary and miraculous story on the face of the earth. That despite our small size, we are not only eternal, but have had a more important impact in the history of the world than any other nation. We have been chosen as an eternal nation to play a greater role in the history of the world than any other.
Basically, the Israeli narrative is that they are better and more important than everyone on earth.
Tikkun olam, as they call it. You want to know what tikkun olam is? When good rules and dominates and subjugates Ra. Which means, when Klal Yisrael rules the world, when Klal Yisrael is supreme, and the nations of the world are subject to the Jewish people, and under the umbrella of the Jewish people, they have rectification, they have tikkun. That's tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is not save the planet. Tikkun olam is when Jews are shomrei Torah u'mitzvos, and the Gentiles recognize the supremacy of the Jewish people, and they assist us. That's tikkun olam. Everyone is better off when Klal Yisrael is supreme. And then the nations of the world are subject to the Jewish people, and they could then hang their hats on the Jewish people. In other words, a guy has tikkun when he's able to recognize the supremacy of the Jewish people and try to assist the Jewish people in any way. So therefore, the Jewish people are elevated, and the nations of the world are elevated. It's good for everyone. It's good for the Jews. It's good for the non-Jews. And Klal Yisrael is supreme. They generate Kedusha. They're elevated. The nations of the world recognize that. they're subject to us, they assist us, and they're elevated. But when the Jewish people are not fulfilling the Torah, and we are not who we're supposed to be, then the Gentiles have no one to hang their hat on. They have nothing to exist for, and their existence is rendered, their existence is not meaningful. Their existence is for the betterment of the Jewish people.
Victimhood. The degree of their victimhood grants them an unrivaled moral standing. And because their past suffering makes them morally untouchable, everything they do, say, and feel is right and moral. And to question this is tantamount to hate, as it denies their prior oppression the moral infallibility that surely accompanies such historical trauma. Shame. The trauma of collective persecution in Christian Europe, their own religious figures victim-blaming Jews themselves for their exile and weakness, and top it all off with the Holocaust, together produce feelings of low self-worth and great shame, with a particular aversion to anything that reminds them of their previous weakness. Think about it. If you were in school and your entire class spent the whole year calling you worthless, you probably wouldn't feel very good about yourself. And then when you went home afterwards, your own parents told you that it was God's punishment for being unworthy, you'd start to feel really ashamed of yourself. So to cope with this internalized trauma and shame, Israelis have thus constructed a national identity that enshrines strength.
מדינה לוקחים עם חרב. ככה אבא שלי אמר לי. המדינה מתשווה.
It allows for no weakness. It is no wonder then that prominent Jewish figures have said things like, "I am not my grandfather's Jew," or "I am not a Jew," with trembling knees. They built an identity around being tough and strong to avoid feeling the weakness and shame of their past. And by casting themselves as morally flawless by merit of their Jewishness and as survivors of extreme hate, they maintain this inflated self-image to explain away their aggressive behavior as not only necessary, but righteous.
Why should the world tolerate you having nuclear weapons and not, say, Iran?
We suffered one Holocaust. We listened to our neighbors.
Is it because of the Holocaust that you should be allowed to have nuclear weapons?
You know what? This interview was finished now. Your attitude is so hostile.
In this twisted worldview, the victim becomes the victimizer, as if the perpetual victim card has given it license to do as it wishes against anyone, with impunity, without any censure. Because when you are not just the biggest victim, but the most important victim, you are above criticism, above accountability. Israel's ego is fragile and heavily dependent on how others perceive it. And challenging this self-image threatens to expose its deep-seated insecurities. This is why Israel labels even the gentlest of criticisms leveled at it as anti-Semitic. And this is why Israel weaponizes toxic behaviors and psychological defense mechanisms to deny accountability and avoid criticism, as if its very existence depends on it. This is why Israel often describes the world in extremes: black or white, good or evil, children of darkness, or children of light. By simplifying its emotional landscape to this worldview, it avoids confronting the uncomfortable realities of its actions. Because of this extreme reductionist worldview, admitting a mistake would mean admitting the capacity to make mistakes, and this would shatter their carefully constructed identity of moral infallibility. So they cling to the belief that they are pure, innocent, and perfect, and their every action is correct, moral, and righteous. The ends wholly justify the means, and if you don't agree, it's only because you are an anti-Semite and hate Israel's very existence. This is how and why Israel will claim, either through self-delusion or bold-faced lies, or a combination of the two, and in the face of overwhelming evidence and international condemnation, that its occupation of Palestine isn't real, the apartheid isn't real, the genocide isn't real, the famine isn't real, the Palestinian experience isn't real, because Palestinians themselves aren't even real. After all, you can't be God's chosen if you're a genocidal, racist apartheid state actively colonizing, starving, raping, and murdering hundreds of thousands of people.
Are you denying that people have died of starvation in Gaza? Are you denying that there was a famine, that famine is imminent now?
Hamas stole it as well. They profited from it.
In the rare event that Israel does acknowledge its actions, it will shift blame and declare that the Palestinians deserve it and are ultimately responsible for it. To quote Golda Meir, "We will never forgive the Arabs for forcing us to kill their children." Palestinians often find themselves being accused of the very behaviors Israelis showcase. Israel will do anything to protect its self-image, and psychologically projecting its own behaviors onto the Palestinians is how it accomplishes this. Projection in its malignant forms is a psychological defense mechanism in which the ego defends itself against disowned and highly negative parts of the self by denying their existence in itself and attributing them to others, causing untold interpersonal damage. In other words, projection of shame manifests in accusations that are, in reality, confessions. They accuse the Palestinians of what they themselves are guilty of to shift blame, create confusion, and distract. Israel is the one beheading babies, burning them alive, raping both men and women in torture camps, entering homes and murdering Palestinians as they sleep. Israel is the one committing genocide and ethnic cleansing from the river to the sea, not just in 2025, but ever since its establishment in 1948. And one of the most egregious projections that we see from Israeli society onto the Palestinians is something that lies at the heart of Israel's ethos: domination and sexual violence. Israeli society, the product of the contrasting narratives of victimhood and supremacy and the resulting shame and insecurity these narratives give rise to, is absolutely obsessed with domination and sexual violence. In keeping with its extreme reductionist outlook, Israel views the world through the lens of domination. The only way to avoid being perceived as weak is to be dominant. This is why October 7th was so humiliating for Israeli society. The carefully crafted image of an unbeatable and morally superior army was shattered almost overnight by orphans who broke out from what is essentially one giant ghetto, wielding Soviet-era weapons. The Palestinians tore through Israel's delusional self-image of strength and superiority, bringing to surface Israel's feelings of insecurity. These feelings are why Israel has needed to lie about what happened on October 7th. In addition, of course, to the need to justify and manufacture consent for its subsequent campaign of collective punishment and genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza. The Israelis say that their army wasn't defeated because their army wasn't attacked. It was innocent women and children who were attacked, who were dominated.
Women brutally raped and murdered. They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
I want you to remember what I just said. Really remember it. Because before continuing on with this train of thought, we need to take a minute to examine the giant elephant in the room that is Israeli society's pathological fixation with rape, and explore how it connects to their ideas of supremacy and the insecure paranoias of domination. Israel's problem goes much deeper than just having the highest rate of sexual violence in the Middle East, because the origin of this issue in Israeli society stems from its own foundational narratives of supremacy and entitlement. You see, because of their supremacist belief as God's chosen race, many Israelis vehemently oppose miscegenation, otherwise known as race mixing. This is because race mixing is perceived as a form of domination of their supreme race. The rabbi and former deputy minister of Israel, Eli Ben-Tahan, literally said Jewish-Arab mixed marriages is a silent Holocaust. While Israel doesn't have an official anti-miscegenation law, it is illegal for an Arab to marry a Jew in the country. When couples decide to hold a marriage ceremony in violation of these laws anyway, they are harassed by extremists who threaten to murder them for their relationship.
This woman, Mai, she would describe herself as a typical Jewish Israeli woman. She met this man named Gabriel. He's an African refugee from Sudan, and they met and fell in love and decided to spend their lives together. One day, they decided to take a weekend off. They drove down to the tourist town of Eilat. They take their photos and they upload them to Facebook. Lahava isn't just combing through the city streets looking for mixed couples. They're also scouring the internet for any evidence of such. And so when they see that Mai has uploaded these pictures to her Facebook page, they copy it and they paste it onto their racist networks. Like, we don't have enough Mohammeds and Ahmeds of our own. Now the Sudanese are taking our women too. In this way, try to rile up racist sentiments and try to shame women and threaten women who live like this.
In one case, crowds surrounded a mixed wedding in Haifa and chanted, "Death to the Arabs."
We have the story of Mahmoud and Moral. Now, Mahmoud is the son of Muslim citizens of Israel. Moral, the daughter of Jewish citizens of Israel. They fell in love with one another, decided to get married and spend their lives together. The day that they chose to celebrate their union with their family and friends. Unfortunately, instead of being able to spend those moments cherishing that time, he had to end up going to court on the day of his own wedding because Benzi Gupstein of Lehava took their wedding invitation and he distributed it again on his racist networks and invited all his frenzied followers to come out to their wedding and protest. Mahmoud went to court appealed to the judge, please stop this. She didn't see fit to do so. The wedding went ahead, and so did the protests. And you had hundreds of Israeli Jews outside the wedding hall screaming, Mavet la'aravim, death to the Arabs. One of the signs that was being held up and one of the chants that was going on is Hitbolelut hi shoah la'ama Yehudi. Intermarriage is a holocaust for the Jewish people.
Festive, huh? There are several anti-miscegenation groups in Israel dedicated to hunting down Arabs they suspect may be interested in Jewish women.
You have anti-miscegenation marches in Israeli cities. And you've got even little kids, even like these prepubescent boys, to protest through the streets and scream and yell. Jewish women for the Jewish people. In the case of the city of Ashkelon, it was actually led and organized by the deputy mayor.
They patrol the streets and jump young Palestinian men to discourage them from visiting public areas where there could be Jewish women.
You have groups that suit up and they're all in the same uniform and they march through the streets of Israeli cities inspecting the area, trying to find Jews and non-Jews so that they can break them up, so they can harass them and harangue them.
In one case, Jamal Julani was nearly beaten to death by Jewish gangs who jumped him. These gangs then tried to prevent medics from resuscitating him.
There's some people who take it to the next level. They just mask up and then they just beat them and they'll put them in the hospital or they'll put them in the morgue. But this young man, Jamal Julani, a young Palestinian man, was just walking down the street in downtown Jerusalem, just minding his own business. And a group of Israeli Jews saw him and they were just incensed. Yeah, let's get him. And they just jumped on him out of nowhere and they beat him so badly they actually killed, technically he was dead. That paramedics came and they resuscitated him. While they're resuscitating him, the people who perpetrated this, the very men who beat him, are standing around. They're not running away. They're not trying to hide. They're standing over him. They're saying, what do you care? Why are you trying to revive him? He's an Arab. They also didn't care when the police caught up to them. And they said, yeah, straight up, we beat him because he's an Arab, because we don't want him potentially flirting with our women.
Groups like this go beyond just harassing and physically assaulting Palestinians. They murder them as well.
Mohammed Abu Khder, they beat him and they dragged him to a forest and they poured gasoline down his throat and they burnt him to death from the inside out.
The youth guilty of carrying out this heinous crime had been motivated by rabbis and officials who made calls for genocidal violence just days prior.
Speaking to a group of young Jewish Israeli men, he tells them, the Rebbe, the rabbi, who is here with us, expects us to commit acts of Phineas. Go out and do what Phineas did. The rabbi wants you to. And sure enough, the very next night, a group of Jewish Israeli men went out, kidnapped this young Palestinian boy outside his parents' home. Days later, when cops caught up with them and interrogated them and asked them, why did you do this? They said, we were inspired by the story of Phineas.
Pinchas in the Torah, otherwise known as Phineas in the English language Old Testament, was a Jewish priest during the Exodus. He was so incensed by miscegenation that he took a sword and plunged it through the bodies of an interracial Jewish Midianite couple in the middle of their lovemaking.
These groups claim him, say we are the sons of Phineas. We carry on this tradition proudly.
These anti-miscegenist gangs are not new in Israeli society. Their existence predates the establishment of the State of Israel.
This isn't a new invention, sad to say. You had groups like this, the Committee for the Protection of the Honor of Jewish Women, that were established by the rabbinate. They formed these groups and they would go around just like Lahava and they would find those women who on their own established authentic relationships with non-Jewish men, and they would harass them and they would threaten them, and sometimes they would beat them and sometimes they would murder them. And that was if they were dating a British man. If they were known to be dating a Palestinian man, they would grab one of these women, turn them upside down, and pour hot peppers into her vagina.
These anti-miscegenation groups aren't just fringe extremists. They make up a populous and influential segment of Israeli society, and their ideas permeate through the legal system. For example, because of these anti-miscegenation ideas, most schools in Israel are segregated. The Israeli mayors Ron Huldai and Yonah Yahav have proudly worked to prevent race-mixing schools in their cities. Quote, Jews and Arabs learning together is disgusting. No wonder we have race mixing. Mind you, Ron Huldai was the mayor of Tel Aviv, Israel's most liberal city, where LGBTQ parades are praised and allowed, while mixed schools are not. In the sick and twisted minds of Israelis, race mixing in schools could lead to Arabs and Jews falling in love, which could lead to race mixing, which leads to the Holocaust or domination of God's chosen race. This paranoia and fear is deeply ingrained in Israeli society and is even exported around the world. For example, the Ministry of Education spent $4 million to prevent Jews from engaging in intermarriage in the West. Even the former Prime Minister, Yair Lapid, considered by many to be a moderate, condemned intermarriage. So again, for Israelis, race mixing is a form of domination of their supreme race. As Rabbi Eli Ben-Dahan put it, Jewish-Arab mixed marriages is a silent Holocaust. He also said that Palestinians are beasts, not humans. Jews have a higher soul than a goy. So you can see how sexual violence and domination are intertwined and deeply embedded in the Israeli psyche. Perhaps this is why we see IDF soldiers taking photos in the lingerie of Palestinian women, because destroying their homes and killing them isn't enough. They need to sexually dominate them as well. Just take a look at this photo of an IDF soldier boasting about sniffing the socks of a 5-year-old girl in Gaza twice a day, every day, for 4 months. Now, whether he actually did this or not, merely joking about it on his own social media account reveals deep-seated insecurities and the sick obsession with sexual dominance. There are too many stories to count of Israelis raping Palestinians, from the British Mandate to the Nakba, to the modern day where IDF soldiers are literally on camera anally raping Palestinian prisoners to death in concentration camps. In one particularly vicious story from the Nakba, a Palestinian girl from Gaza was gang raped to death by Israeli soldiers. We only know about this because Israel's first Prime Minister, Ben-Gurion, personally documented it. According to Israeli historian Ilan Pape, Ben-Gurion maintained a special section in his diary with the headline, "Rape Cases." Pape writes, David Ben-Gurion seems to have been informed about each case and entered them into his diary. Despite the direct knowledge of the highest authority in Jewish politics at the time, the Jewish soldiers continued raping, murdering, and pillaging as they wanted, just like they are doing in Gaza today. There are also numerous accounts of Israelis raping each other in the government, in the military, in society at large. This is why the accusation that Palestinians carried out systemic sexual violence on October 7th is especially twisted, because it's a projection. It's Israel's collective subconscious confessing to crimes they have committed and continue to commit every day. There aren't enough words to describe Israeli society. They are sick, disturbed, and psychotic, to say the least. But if there was one word that can simply describe their disturbed psyche, it's narcissism. The psychotherapist Avigail Aberbanel, who was born and raised in Israel before renouncing her Israeli citizenship in the 1990s, calls Israel's behavior typical narcissistic personality disorder with a hint of psychopathy. When a narcissist is exposed for their behavior, they explode with rage. Narcissistic rage is a disproportionately intense anger reaction when their inflated sense of self is threatened. This rage can manifest itself as explosive outbursts, emotional or verbal abuse, manipulation, or even physical aggression, often triggered by criticism, perceived slights, or a loss of control. This narcissistic rage is what we are witnessing in Gaza and on the global stage. Zionists everywhere, whether they are Jewish Israelis or their supporters, are completely losing their minds as their beloved Israel is exposed for what it truly is: a genocidal, colonial, apartheid state of racist, supremacist rapists. With approval ratings plummeting in Western societies, you can expect this reactionary behavior to continue and escalate.
What's a genocide? What's the definition of a genocide?
The deliberate attempt to exterminate a people. What Israel's doing.
I'd like to know. No, I just want to know the definition.
It's also a Holocaust.
I'm a Holocaust?
A Holocaust.
My grandparents are Holocaust survivors.
And you're supporting the new Holocaust.
Use that word.
You're supporting the new Holocaust. Hey, get her away from me. I just asked the speaker a question.
I'm having a conversation.
Get this Holocaust supporter away from me.
I'm a Holocaust survivor. I'm
and supporter. And you're continuing the Holocaust. You're continuing the Holocaust. You're continuing the Holocaust. Tens of thousands of slaughtered children. Yeah, it's ethnic cleansing. It's what's happening in Gaza. Okay.
We talked to you earlier.
She came up to me. I asked her a question.
We talked about this earlier.
To shake his hand.
Yeah, and you started.
Him.
Let's go.
No, I wasn't. I asked him a question. I asked, okay, can I get my tripod?
He's gonna get it. No more questions.
Why are you crying? Why are you supporting a Holocaust?
Let's go.
And you're supporting a Holocaust.
Come on, let's go. He'll meet.
You're supporting the mass slaughter of children.
Let's go. Come on.
You're a settler.
Now, every claim should be investigated individually based on the merits of the evidence provided. But if this video has made you realize anything, it's that Israel's accusations are often nothing more than the sick, deluded confessions of a disturbed society. Let me know what you think. Is there anything I'm missing? Let me know in the comment section. If you liked this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, our channel's a little too controversial for getting actual sponsors, so if you want to support our work, click the link and support our work with a financial contribution so we can keep producing these explainer videos that you love.
Trust nothing. No law.